African immigrants settle in Canada. It is what it sounds like. They help newcomers from Africa settle anywhere in Canada and adapt to life here without hassles, providing individual and family support, driver's road test assistance, student support, computer skills training, and job search assistance. Free consultations are available all year round. Contact African Immigration Settlement in Canada. Visit aisic.ca. That's aisic.ca.
So the next thing will be on our agenda is information about ISIC. I'm going to give a brief introduction of ISIC, All African Canadian Immigration Solution Incorporation. It was founded in May 2009 and was established through the vision of a passionate leader who recognized the need to help African immigrants settle and thrive in Canada without unnecessary stress. Since its inception, ISIC has remained committed to empowering newcomers to build a stable and successful life in their new home. Our programs and services include road test assistance and driving education, youth empowerment and mentorship programs, support for international students, community and family support services, elderly and childcare support, employment and career development workshops, and settlement and integration guidance. On the 8th of August 2025, ISIC received its Canada Revenue Agency registration number and so became officially recognized as a non-profit organization. This means that all donations made to ISIC are eligible for official tax receipts. Over the years, by the grace of God, ISIC has continued to grow and serve the African community in Canada, promoting hope, empowerment, and transformation for newcomers. Like I said, it would be great to see some emojis, just something to be sure that I'm not alone here. I can see people on the call, but just some response. Thank you. Today, we're going to be listening to a conversation on entrepreneurship and business opportunities. The topic is starting a business as a new immigrant in Canada. And the key discussion points are business registration, funding opportunities, and government support programs. Our speaker, David, is a Nigerian Canadian immigrant and is the founder of Outreach Genius, a venture backed that focuses on deploying AI voice agents for home services companies. He brings a unique blend of software and sales expertise and over 12 years of hands-on entrepreneurial experience. David is on the call, so I will be handing over to him right now so that he can take us through the presentation.
Yes. Can everyone hear me right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Is it possible to have as many people on camera? Have people on camera as much as possible. That would be wonderful. Can we get people on camera, if possible? Because we're going to have a very, very amazing conversation today. This is actually going to be one of the most game-changing conversation that we're going to engage in today. So I want to make sure we're all present, we are attentive, and more importantly, this is not me talking at you. This is a back and forth interaction and conversation. So I have a lot of experience and a lot of insights to share, and I want to make sure that we engage in properly. First, I'm just going to start off by introducing myself and why you should listen to me. So my name is David Owasi. As mentioned, I came to Canada in 2011. So I'm just going to share some quick pictures here. Can everyone see my screen here? Can everyone see my screen? Yes?
Yes. Yeah.
So this was my family when we moved to Canada in 2011. We were at the airport here, and this feels like a very, very long time ago. And we moved to Canada in 2011. And just like many of yourself, when I moved, I was very excited about the opportunity being in Canada, but I also understood the magnitude of the opportunity in front of me. And I was very determined to make as much of this opportunity as possible for myself, my family, and fulfill my potential. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today is twofold. One is my own story and kind of how I went from here to here and doing a whole bunch of stuff, and also how you can take your ideas, your goals, and make the most of your presence in Canada. Before we kind of dive in, I want to get a sense of the types of people on the call today. How long have you been in Canada? Like, how long have you been in Canada? Or are you in Canada, or what country are you from? If you can put it in the chat so I can get a sense of who's on the call today. So, where are you calling from? Maybe that'll be a good place to start, as well as how long you have been in where you're from, if you're in Canada, or maybe some people are from Nigeria. I'm not sure, Pastor, if some people are from Nigeria, but I'll chat so we can get a sense of where people are from. Canada, 5 years from Grace. Thank you, Grace. Who else? Anyone else? We've got 30 people in chat. Joycey, Canada, 2 years. Wonderful. Okay, so Nelson, 4 months. Okay, good, good. And then Lois from Nigeria, 4 months. Good. That's awesome. And then Canada, 18 months. Okay, good. International student in Canada from Nigeria, being here for over 2 years. Really good. Years from Dada. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you all for the engagement. So the way I like to do things is to make this a back and forth interaction, not just me again talking at you. I want you to ask questions. I will share some key ideas that I think will help you think about how to position your success, and what things that I have learned over the last couple of years being in Canada, and making success for myself. And then, of course, I will be able to answer your questions. So this would be somewhat informal because, again, I want it to be very, very conversational. That I'm sure you go to YouTube and you see a whole bunch of videos of people talking at you. I want it to be very much back and forth. So I will start off by just talking about my own personal story. So Pastor Ige was a very important part of my story because he was one of the key architects for helping my family to move to Canada in 2011. And when we came to Canada, just like many people who moved to a new country, there was just a whole bunch of challenges to figure out. Everything from adjusting to the culture to starting over afresh again. Of course, I was very excited about the opportunity to get things done. But obviously, there were a lot of challenges, from financial challenges to cultural challenges to understanding what I want to do. And over the last couple of years, I figured out a way to overcome some of those challenges, but beyond overcoming them, really make the most of my time here and seize the opportunities with both hands. So I'm going to be sharing some of those with you today. So in terms of what I ended up doing, so when I moved, my family and I, we moved to Canada in 2011. The first thing was obviously getting enrolled at the university. So I studied computer science. So software engineering was what I studied for 4 years. But more importantly, while I was studying software engineering, I started a painting business. So you might have seen the picture I shared earlier on. That was one of what I was, running that business. I was literally, getting my hands literally dirty, but in all ways, I was painting houses. So the idea of the business was, during the evenings, and so during the day, I go to classes and I take my classes. I was doing a full workload, software engineering, or engineering courses and math courses, etc. And then in the evenings, I will literally go out into the community and will knock on doors. And it was very, very cold when I was doing this. I would literally knock on doors and say, "Hey, my name is David. We're looking to do some work for homes in the summer. Would you like a free estimate to paint your house?" And a lot of Canadians, they want their house to be pretty and look very nice. And many of them will say, "Sure, why not? Come give me an estimate." So I would do that during the evenings. And then over the weekends, I would go do the estimates. During the evenings, I was doing marketing to generate interest and to find customers. And then over the weekends, I was doing the actual estimates. And then I will measure their house. I'll tell them how much it would cost to paint their house. On average, it was anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 to paint houses. And then I would take a deposit. And then when I take the deposit, I would do that every week. And then at some point, I had enough money that I was able to hire somebody to go do the knocking on doors for me. But I did the knocking on doors for like many myself. So again, when it comes to entrepreneurship, which we'll talk about a lot in detail shortly, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty, to work very hard, and to really take a lot of risk and put yourself out there, and not think that everything will come easy. You have to really be willing to do all of that hard work. And that's kind of what I did while taking my university courses. And then fast forward, I did that for over 5 years. We generated almost $1 million in revenue while still studying at the university and completing my computer science degree. I did that, painting houses. It was a very simple business, but it was very, very creative. And that was kind of like the beginning of my entrepreneurship experience. So talking to you today, I'm not talking about theories or ideas. I'm talking about lived experience, things that I have personally done myself. And since then, I've actually taken my entrepreneurship journey even further. Now, my company is called Outreach Genius, like Faith introduced me. And what we do is we leverage AI technology to help home services companies generate sales opportunities and never miss opportunities on sales using AI voice. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about is AI a little bit as well, because that really ties into entrepreneurship and how to think about entrepreneurship in 2026. You definitely need to be thinking about AI. And we've raised over $1 million from investors who are invested in our company. And we have some of the biggest banks in Canada investing in our company, which has been a huge, tremendous success for us. And my journey has not been without the grace of God. God has been giving me a lot of favor, and strength, and wisdom, and put the right people around me. But also, there's the aspect of you actually just doing the work yourself, and also having the skill set and having the understanding and the wisdom of how to leverage your own skills and your abilities to bring your plans to life. So in a nutshell, that is sort of high level kind of my story. And I was sharing that just because everything I'm going to tell you after this, I want it to be based on the idea of that I'm speaking from experience. I'm not just talking some talking points. So far, everyone with me so far? Good? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, very
Wonderful. Thank you for the engagements. We're going to start talking about some ideas. I have some thoughts prepared here. And then in between, as we have questions, just feel free to share the questions. So even though the topic today is all about entrepreneurship, starting a business and how to get government funding, the way I think about it is something a little bit more broader than that, because starting a business is just a thing, but there are steps that you need to take inside yourself first before you start a business. I don't recommend just starting a business because that's the cool thing to do. You need to be able to prepare yourself mentally and have the right framework and systems to start a business. So there's a quote I always love: we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. Everybody has big goals. Everyone wants to be a multimillionaire, and there's a reason why not everyone is a millionaire, because your goal doesn't mean you're going to get there. It's the systems, it's the strategies, it's the foundations that you have in place is what's going to help you get to that goal. So we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And today, what I want to share with you is how can you have the right system in place such that whatever it is, the business ideas you have for entrepreneurship, you'll be able to rise to those level of goals. So I'll talk about some mindset shifts that we need to have as a community, as individuals, that will equip us to then hit our goals. So the first idea that I'm going to share with you today is the idea of leverage. So leverage is a very, very important word for me. Before I talk about leverage, how do we understand the concept of leverage? When I say the word leverage, what does that mean to you? Can you put that in the chat? Anyone who wants to take a stab at it? Leverage, what does that mean for you? The concept of leverage, I'm gonna type it in the chat here. Leverage, what does leverage means to you? Any takers? Leverage, leverage, leverage. Who wants to go? What does leverage mean to you? I always ask this all the time. I always get very, very different response. Take opportunity of something from grace. I like that. Landry is saying what you can use to your advantage. I really love that. And Flintstone is saying, Flintstone, can I be taking advantage of surrounding opportunities to create something? I love that. Advantages. Good. So these are very, very good approaches to the word leverage. And if you have plans of being an entrepreneur, the word leverage has to be your best friend, because I always think about this. Somebody who is mopping floors, and by the way, I once had a job mopping floors. So no, I used to be that person. That was my first job when I came to Canada. Somebody who is mopping floors and Jeff Bezos, who is one of the richest people in the world, they both work very, very hard. So hard work is not the only thing you need to succeed. You need to work hard at the right things. Right? You need to focus your energy on the right things. And when you think about the concept of leverage, it helps you understand, where should I be focusing my attention on? So the way I define leverage is, how do you take 1 unit of inputs, 1 unit of effort, energy, and how do you make that result into 100 unit of output? So I put in $1 of my time into something and I get $100 in results. That is leverage, and that compounds. When you're thinking about going into entrepreneurship, you don't want to just think of, oh, any business I can do or any service I can offer. You want to think about, what is the lowest amount of effort I can put into this thing, in quotes, when I say lowest amount of effort, it doesn't mean you're lazy, but what's the one unit of effort I can put into this thing that can give me 100 unit of outputs? Because that's how you can compound yourself. And the quote I like is that compounding interest is one of the 7 wonders of the world, really, if you can compound effort. So when it comes to leverage, it's all about how do you put in 1 unit of effort into something and get 10x, 100x, 1000x unit of output. That's how you can really, really grow really well. So there are sort of 2 ways to think about leverage. There's something we call permission-based leverage, and there is non-permission-based leverage. So there are 4 levers of leverage. So the first one is labor. When I say levers of leverage, it means that for you to get more out of something, there are 4 ways to get it done, right? The first one is hiring people. So you can absolutely hire somebody, and that person now can do work while you are doing something else. That's one of the most straightforward ways of getting leverage, is to hire somebody to do some of the work for you. And over the last couple of years, I've hired many people, and they help compound my efforts, meaning I go get clients, and then they do the work, and I get paid based on the effort that they've done. And then the second one is capital, so money. So that's why you get money from the bank, you get money from investors, you get money from your own personal savings, and you're able to put that money into use, and that allows you to get more done by paying for services, paying for things. Now, the problem with labor and capital, which is hiring people, collaborating with people, as well as getting investment or getting money, it's what we call permission leverage, meaning that you need somebody to give you money. You need somebody to choose to work for you. And sometimes when you're starting out in your journey, that is not very, very clear, or that is not very apparent how to get there. So sometimes those type of leverage is out of reach for most people. And frankly, when you're starting out in your entrepreneurship journey, you probably don't want to start out by hiring people because you don't have the means, you don't have the experience, you don't have the resources to start. Which brings us to the second category of leverage called non-permissioned leverage. So non-permissioned leverage is the types of leverage that you can use that doesn't need the permission of anybody. And there are 2 types in this section. The first one is code. So code is basically software. And when we talk about software, it's basically if you write a piece of software, or if you have a piece of software, whether 10 people are using it, or 100 people are using it, or 1,000 people are using it, you're not working any harder. The software does the hard work for you. And that is one of the reasons why software companies are one of the most valuable companies in the world. If you think about, stock market, and you look at the top, the big, companies, the big 7, most of them are in some sense software companies. Facebook, Google, all of those are software companies, because when they write the code, whether 1,000 people or 1 billion people or 30 billion people use that code, the person who wrote the code is not working any harder. That is like leverage in its truest form, because you put in 1 unit of input and then you get infinite amount of outputs, and you're not doing any additional work. So when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, you want to think, how can I use the most leverage to compound work? And when you're thinking in that frame, then everything all of a sudden changes, because you're saying, oh, that opportunity is not good for me. I'm going to work very hard, but the leverage I'm going to get out of it is not going to be very high. So maybe let me say no to that opportunity. So that's kind of one aspect is code and software. And in code and software, we then talk about AI, and I'll talk about AI in more details in a little bit. But the second piece of leverage is called media. So that is social media. So that is creating content. Again, think of when you create content, you create content, you do a video or you do a post, and you do it once, right? And whether 1,000 people, 1 million people, 10 million people, 100 million people contents, you're not working any harder. The content is doing that hard work for you. So that is, again, another piece of leverage. Now, when we combine all of these leverage pieces together, we've got labor, hiring people, that collaborating with people, capital, in getting investments, getting loans, getting money to help you move faster. We've got code, software, AI underneath code, and then we've got social media, creating content, getting your ideas out there into the world. When you combine all of those 4 things, now you can be very much unstoppable. And in the subset of all of this, we're going to talk about, on the capital side, we're going to talk about how to get some money. On the labor side, we're going to talk about how to get some employees to work for you. We're going to talk about media and code. We're also going to talk about social media in some small details. And that is going to be the premise of our conversation today. Any questions so far on any of those 4 levers of leverage? Any questions so far? Is that clear? Does everyone understand the concept of leverage? Any questions? Any thoughts? Good. Yes. Thanks from Fatia. So you're saying, yes, you understand that And it's very important that we really understand this concept because, again, this is how you can make sure that you're not just working hard for no results. Because working hard doesn't guarantee you success. Not working hard though guarantees you failure, that's for sure. But the fact that you're working hard doesn't mean you're going to be successful. And it's very important, especially for our community. We know, all of us know, that we need to be working hard, but we need to know how to work smart, not just hard alone. And thinking about things from the perspective of leverage helps us to move much faster. So the next kind of concept I'm going to talk about is how do you get the concept of entrepreneurship. So when you move to a new country like Canada, or if you're planning to move to Canada, one of the best way you can build wealth, because most of us, we come to Canada, at least in my case, my family moved to Canada to give ourselves a better chance in life, to be successful in life. And that's great. And that's why most of us want to move to this part of the world, and we have that ambition. But then when you come here, I find that it's very unfortunate that most of our community find themselves only thinking about their value from the perspective of hours worked. So you're like, oh, I'm going to get 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs. So I'm going to do all of these jobs and I'm going to get all this money. And that is a very short-term way of thinking, because again, think about the word leverage. Your hours that you're giving to employers, it's a good place to start and it's a good base, but it doesn't compound. Because if you keep doing that job for 10, 15 years, maybe you will get $2 extra increase in your salary, or you get more dollars per hour, but you're not really compounding anything. And I want to encourage us that when you come to Canada, yes, you want to start out with a job, but think of yourself beyond just getting a job. You want to have a business. And business is one of the surefire way to build wealth and to build value in the Western world, in North America, and anywhere in the world, really, including even Africa, is to start a business. But starting a business obviously is not very, very easy. So I'm going to share with you some of the key concepts of how I would, if I was in your shoes, I want to start something new, how you would go about starting something new. So I have a framework of how to start something new, and I'll share that with you. So the first way to start a business is to begin with a problem. A lot of people think about business as just offering something to the world. I offered you something that you don't want. It doesn't matter how much that thing is valuable. If you don't want it, and if it doesn't solve a problem in your life, you're not going to pay me for it. So I always find that the best entrepreneurs, and this is again from experience for myself, is to start with a problem. When you start with a problem, it's an excellent frame to start a business. And the best types of problems to start typically are problems that you are facing in your own life. If you're solving your own itch, it's a beautiful place to start. So for example, with the example I gave you with my painting company, the problem really was homeowners do not want their home to deteriorate. They want their homes to look good, because the city could actually find them if their home is not looking in good shape. And also, if they want to sell it, then the value of the house goes down if the painting is all peeling and it doesn't look nice. Obviously, there's also some health implications as well. So there's a clear problem there. So when I go up to a homeowner and I knock on their door and I say, hey, Mr. John, painting looks to be in very, very bad shape. I would love to give you an estimate on painting it to restore it for you. I am solving a problem for you. I'm not telling you, be nice to me and give me something. I am solving a clear problem. So the best way to start a business is to look for problems around you, particularly problems that you are experiencing your own self. And the best way is also to ask other people, hey, I'm curious, what problems are you experiencing in your life right now? And also be very observant of problems around you and noticing things that do not look quite well, and what people are hurt, what is hurting people. And when you're able to observe all of these problems, all of a sudden, there is a clear opportunity to add value to other people. And that is basically what business is all about. Business is making people's lives better. It's serving people in a way that is aligned with makes their life better. And once you're able to think about it from that perspective, not just like, oh, I'm going to do this or do that. If you're able to look at things from the standpoint of solving people's problems, business will come super easy to you, because people will throw their money at you if you're truly solving a problem that they have. So that's the first step, is to begin with a problem. And then once you have a problem clear in your mind, here's a problem that people have. I've spoken to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. Everyone seems to be talking about they have the same problem. Then you have something going. Then the next thing though is that it's not every problem is aligned to your own skill set. So you have to find the types of problems that intersect between your own passion, things that you're naturally passionate about, that you love about, and things that also intersect with your skill set, or at least the foundation of your skill set, meaning that even if you have to learn it, you can learn it quite easily. But for example, it would not make sense for me to try and solve a problem in the medical space. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about the world of medicine, and it would just be not practical for me to try and go to that space. So you want to make sure that the problems that you're trying to solve are aligned in some way to your interest, and they intersect between your interest and also your expertise. Now, it doesn't actually mean that you don't have the expertise. You can't go learn. It's just going to take longer for you to start that business. So you typically want to start out with something that you can learn relatively easily. But let's kind of move on from establishing the problem. Then the next step is to then create an offer. So an offer is basically saying, I have identified the gap between where the people are right now and where they want to go. And I'm going to create an offer that shows those individuals how I can help them get from the problem that they have to the solution they're looking for. So they have a problem that they don't want. They have a solution they're looking for, but don't have. I'm going to bridge the gap. And bridging that gap is basically making them an offer. You're making an offer. Now, when it comes to making an offer, we have to think about it very, very, you can't just like offer randomly. You have to think deeply about an offer. And by the way, before you actually are able to deliver on the solution, I always like making offers all the time. So making an offer is a habit that you need to have. Whenever, for example, in my own business, whenever I see a problem that I want to solve for my customers, before I even start like to creating of the resources to like solution, I'm not making offers first because I want to know, does the market actually want to pay for this thing? Is the market really interested in this solution I'm having? So making an offer is a good way for me to gauge the interest of the market, because sometimes you will interview people and they'll be like, yes, I have this problem. Of course, it'll be very nice. But only when they say yes to your offer, do you then confirm that, yes, they're really putting their money where their mouth is. So let's talk about how to create an offer. Actually, before we talk about creating an offer, let's talk about positioning first. So positioning is all about, I've identified a problem in the market. I need to position myself to solve that problem, and then you then make the offer. So let's talk about the position. The position is very, very simple. There are 3 steps to the positioning. The first one is you need to be very clear about who you're solving this problem for. So I help X person, and you have to be like detailed about the person you help. The more detailed you can be about that person, the better they will respond. So you can say, I help moms who've just had babies and who are struggling to get back to professional life. Like that's a very clear subset of individuals. So the more you can define the person you are helping, the more likely that person will raise up their hands and say, oh yes, that is me. I have that problem. If you cannot define that person well enough, then you don't have clarity on the problem you have to solve. You can't say, I help everyone become better. Well, if you're selling to everybody, you're selling to nobody really. So the work when you're defining the problem is really being very, very, very clear about who that person is in as much detail as possible. So that's the first part. I help X person get Y outcome. So you need to be very clear about the outcome you're going to get for them. There has to be clarity on where they want to go. So you're talking about this person, you have to talk about the outcome that they want, and then you also have to talk about the headache you're helping them avoid by getting to that outcome. So here's an example. I help moms who are trying to get back to, I help new moms who have just had a baby in 2 years, trying to get back into the workforce. I help them get a good paying job that fit their skill sets without having to send out 2,000 resumes. Right? That is an offer right there. So you're defining the exact person you're helping, you're defining the outcome and the solution you're helping them get, and you're also telling them all the headache that you help them avoid to get that solution. And that is what we call a positioning statement. It's called a market dominating position. It comes from you understanding the problem, then identifying who it is for, identifying the solution that they want, and then identifying the headache you're helping them avoid to get to that solution. Any questions about positioning and problem solver before I talk about making an offer? Are we following along? Am I going too fast? Everyone good? Tell me in the chat, what do you think? Everyone good? Everyone feel going along with me? Wonderful. So we want to talk about then, once you've made that positioning statement yourself, now anyone who hears there, so the whole point of a positioning statement is that someone will hear it and they'll be like, that is for me or that is not for me. You don't want people to be neutral about your positioning statements. You want them to say, clearly, I want that or that is not for me. If people are not on either extremes, then you're doing a bad job of positioning yourself. By virtue of the word positioning, it means that you are trying to go to the marketplace and say, here is who I'm serving and here is how I'm serving them. Cool. Now, once we've done the positioning, The next step is to then create an offer. An offer is basically how people will then go from that's interesting to I want to buy this. I'm going to give you money to solve my problem. When we think about making an offer, there are 4 components to making an offer. The first part of the component of making an offer is you have to be very clear about the dream outcome you're going to help that person get. So the person clearly has a problem, but they want something on the other end of the problem. Your offer needs to be clear about what that dream scenario is. And the way to know that is by asking the people who have that problem, what would be a perfect solution for you? If I give you a magic wand right now and you solve this problem, what does that magical solution looks like? So your offer needs to incorporate that magic solution. The second thing your offer needs to incorporate is the likelihood that you're going to get them to that outcome. I could promise you $1 million tomorrow. I could say, hey, I'm going to wire everybody $1 million. But then you're probably going to look at me and what's the likelihood of David actually doing that? Very low. So if you make a big promise and people don't feel like the likelihood of getting that outcome, they don't feel like it's high, they won't believe in your offer. So you need to figure out a way where, yes, you're going to make them this promise of this dream outcome, but the likelihood of them getting that outcome, you have to figure out a way to back it up. And the way you would back that up is by saying, hey, this aligns with my professional skill set. So I've done this before, or this aligns with something that I've done in the past, or you have a money back guarantee where if you don't get this outcome, you're going to get your money back. So you need to figure out a way to have people believe that the dream outcome that you've given them, they're going to get it. And if they don't get it, there's some sort of recourse. So that's the money back guarantee. And there's a whole strategy around that. So the first 2 parts of making people offers, of creating an offer for your business is to make sure that you're addressing the dream outcome and you're also addressing the likelihood of them getting that success. There's the 2 things on the second half. The first one is the time difference between when they pay you and when they get that solution. If I tell you I'm going to help you get, I don't know, let's just think about a solution. If I tell you I'm going to help you get a dream job, maybe I'm a professional, I'm trying to help people get jobs. But the time difference between when you come to me and you pay me and when I help you get a job is 2 years, then that is not very useful to you. You want the job right now. And most times, most people, they want the solution right now. So if you're going to make an offer, you have to figure out, how do I collapse the time between when they pay me for this thing and the time I deliver the dream outcome to them? And the shorter that time difference is, the more compelling your offer is. So think about the world of fitness. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the world of fitness. There is fitness coaches that will help people get in shape, right? And then there are plastic surgeons that will just come in and do operation and get all the fat out and you're on your way. Why are plastic surgeons more expensive than trainers? Well, because even both of them, the plastic surgeon and the trainers, they have the same offer, which is we will help you get rid of your fats. But the thing is that the trainer will say it will take you 12 months to get that result. And the plastic surgeon will say, oh, it will just take us an afternoon of surgery and I'll get you the results. Because people want results instantly and fast, they're obviously going to pay the plastic surgeon way more money than the trainer because they want the result faster. So that is the idea of collapsing the time between when you make the promise of the solution and when they get it. It's much faster. The faster that time is, the more valuable your offer is. And then the fourth aspect of creating an offer is the effort and sacrifice needed for the person to get the results. So, and again, using the example of fitness world, for you to get the results from the fitness trainer, you have to come to the gym 4 a.m. every morning, every single day. You have to do this consistently for 12 months. That's a lot of time and effort. But the surgeon says, oh, you just have to show up to my office, book your day off, we'll do the surgery, and you get your results. No effort needed, you just have to show up. And that makes the offer much more compelling. And that's why plastic surgeons make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, because they are addressing the dream outcome, which is I'll help you lose your weight, which is what everybody wants. And then they're also saying, I have done this for 50, 100 people already, see all of their pictures. So they have the proof, which increases your likelihood of believing that they can deliver on that result and that promise. And then the time between when you pay the plastic surgeon and when you get the result is so short. It's in a matter of a couple of days. And then the effort and sacrifice needed for you to get that solution is super low. Like there's no effort needed, you just show up. Compared to a fitness trainer, the fitness trainer is still making the same promise that I'm going to help you lose weight and be in shape. And then the fitness person is saying, oh, I've done this for 50 people, and that's compelling, the experience. But where the fitness expert loses the plot is that, it will take 12 months for you to get that result. And then also they will say, oh, you need to come to the gym at 4 a.m. every morning to get the result. That is why fitness experts are paid lesser than a plastic surgeon. So the 4 aspects of creating a compelling offer. So let's walk our way back to where we started out. We talked about the concept of leverage. We talked about the 4 pieces of leverage: hiring people, raising money and capital, then using code and software, and then using media. And we talked about combining all of those 4 things to be able to make sure that when you put in 1 unit of effort into something, you get 100 units of output. That's like framework number 1, the concept of leverage. Then we talked about how to then position yourself based on the problem you've identified in the market. We talked about identifying the specific person you want to help. I help X person, and being clear about who you help, get Y solution or outcome, be very clear about what that solution is without Z headache. That's how you position yourself in the market to solve a problem. And then we kind of then talked about how do you then create an offer. When you position yourself in the market and create an offer, we talked about 4 pieces: address the dream outcome, make sure there is a clear likelihood of you being able to deliver on that dream outcome. We also talked about reducing the time between when you make that promise and when they get a solution. And then we talked about reducing the effort and the sacrifice needed for the customer to get that solution. And when you combine that positioning and that offer, now you've got the foundation for a real business. So before I move further, questions, thoughts? What do you think about all these concepts so far? Are they helpful in laying the foundation for how you think about businesses? What are the questions that you have? Are we following along? Good. I love all the thumbs up. Do you have any questions so far in the chat about any of this concept and ideas? Have you heard of them before? Is this the first time you're hearing about them? What do you think about them? Does it make sense? Are you confused about them? Put them in the chat before we move on. No questions? Everyone is clear about them?
So far, so good. Clear.
Wonderful. I'm glad everyone is following along. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, now that you've defined the problem you want to solve, you've positioned yourself in the marketplace to solve the problem, you've created an offer that will help bridge the gap. Thank you, Faith. Thank you. Yes, you've created an offer that will help you bridge the gap and get people saying, yes, I want this. How do you actually start getting your first customers? How do you start getting the first person to say, you know what, I'm going to pay you for something? There are a couple of strategies to do this. And I'll give you one simple strategy that you can actually implement tomorrow. How do you go from ideating to actually getting your first customer? So I have a strategy, and this strategy is called the giveaway offer. And what the giveaway offer is, now that you know what your ideal customer wants, you have that dream outcome, you want to give it away. You want to do a giveaway offer. Have you all of you are probably familiar with the concept of giveaways, meaning that you probably scrolling online, you see somewhere, hey, you're going to get a raffle draw, right? Put in a little bit of something and you're going to get a car, but you put your information to get a chance to get a car or whatever the big prize is. And everybody's putting their information because they want to get a chance to get a car. We're going to use that same concept for your idea and for your business idea. And basically the way it would work is this. So let's just say the offer or the solution that you want to offer to people is, let's just pick a random one. I'm trying to think of a random good example of a solution. Let's pick the fitness example because everyone is familiar with the world of fitness. So let's just say you're a fitness trainer, right? And you want to help people get in shape, or you want to help them fix their finances, or you want to help them with their investment, whatever it is the business idea is. You want to think about what's the perfect offer that I can give them that is worth the most. So you can think about, oh, I will give you, free 9 weeks, one-on-one, meetings, right, with me. I will create a meal plan for you. You can put together all the different components of the thing that you can actually do for people. And here's where it gets very interesting. You then do a giveaway offer and say, hey, everybody, and you can post this on your social media. You can do whatever way you want to put the word out there. You say, here is this amazing offer I have. And these are all the 6, 7, 8, 9 things you will get from this big, amazing offer. But you know what? I'm going to give it for free to somebody. If you want access to it for free, put your name here or fill out this form. And because everybody wants free stuff, everybody's going to pull all their names and information. And that does 2 things for you. Number one, if nobody puts their name and information, then it means the offer is not good. No one is interested in that offer. The offer is not compelling enough. It did not hit any of those 4 points we talked about. It didn't hit their dream outcome, or people don't believe it, or the time between when you're delivering that offer is just too long and people don't want to wait that long, or it takes too much effort and sacrifice. Remember the 4 quadrant we talked about. So if you make this free, this giveaway offer online or any medium, and no one is signed up for it, that means your offer is fall flat. So you need to go back and then redo the offer and improve it. But if you make that sort of giveaway offer and everybody on Facebook or wherever the means are commenting me, then you know that, oh, I am hitting the pain point in the market and someone is very interested. That's number one. Number two, I want to stay mute. I'm just going to mute. Number two is when you do this giveaway offer online, it serves as your lead generation. That's literally you generating leads. Now, of course, you're going to give the offer away free to one person, right? But you have a ton of other people who will not, qualify for that giveaway, right? And those people who do not qualify for the giveaway, guess what you do to them? You basically reach out to them and say, hey, thank you for expressing interest in the giveaway. This person, Mr. A, won the giveaway, but I know you're very interested. How about I give you this service at 75% discount? Whatever it is you want to give to them to get them back. But the idea is that as long as they've registered their name and put their information, it means that they were interested in the problem that you're trying to solve. And that is how you generate free leads for yourself. And you go from idea to creating an offer to getting your first customer. I know it sounds very complicated to get a first customer, but it really is not if you have the foundations correct. If you've put a lot of thought into defining the problem and positioning yourself properly, and you've also put the thought and the effort into creating the offer, when you go and do this giveaway offer, you're just going to get a lot of people saying, yes, I'm interested. And one person will win the prize, which is the giveaway. You're going to give it to them. And then the remaining people who did not win, they are just basically customers, and you just have to offer them a good deal, and then they become customers. So that is why you go from zero idea to something that you can actually start collecting money from. And I will talk a little bit more about investments, all that stuff later on, but I'm always a believer in fast and quick experiment and iterations. And I don't believe that you want to stay too long. Most people use the idea of getting investments as an excuse, right, to not take action. I do not like that way. I don't like to approach things that way. I prefer to find a way to take as much action as possible. And then once I get some traction, then you can start finding investors, you can start finding government programs like funding, you can start doing all of that stuff. But most people do it the other way around. They spend all their times trying to do busy activities that make them feel as if they're making progress. But really, they're not really making progress. They're just being busy, and it makes them feel good about it themselves, but they're not making any progress at all. So I want to make sure that if you are serious about entrepreneurship and starting a business, forget about all the flashy stuff of getting funding and investment. Make sure that you have the right idea that people want, and you're solving a problem that people will actually pay you money for. Because trust me, I've raised millions of dollars, and I know that what the investors care about is traction. Before I give you any money, even the government, before I give you any money, the people actually want the thing you're selling. And the only best way to do it is to follow this process that I've shared so far. Any questions about the process? Questions or thoughts? Hopefully people are not too overwhelmed with the ideas. No? So we're going to move on. Thank you, Flintstone Academy. It helps me when I know how you're taking this information, because I want to make sure that I am not speaking too fast or giving you too much that you can chew. There's so much to digest, Flintstone Academy. Good. So much to digest. Let me do a quick recap again before we move on. So the first recap again, I'm going to talk about all those ideas because I know that sometimes the ideas feels too overwhelming. So let's kind of do a recap again, because I knew a few people came in while I was talking. So I want to recap everything we've talked about so far, so everyone is very clear. And I'm hoping that you're all taking notes, because again, it's very important that you take notes about these things. So we talked about my story coming to Canada. I have a company called Outreach Genius, an AI company. We have raised millions and millions in investments from investors. I've been an entrepreneur myself for over 10 years at this point now, which is kind of crazy to think about. So a lot of these things that I'm talking to you about, I have done them myself. And then we talked about the idea of leverage. I love to be able to put in 1 unit of effort into something and get 100 units of output out of that thing. And that is a smart way to think about business. You put in 1 unit of your effort and your time, 1 hour of your time, and you get 100 units of output. And when we talk about the concept of leverage, we broke it down into 4 things. We talked about hiring people or collaborating with people, which is labor. We talk about capital, which is raising money and getting capital and investments. Now, for those two things, we categorize them as permission leverage, meaning that you need someone's permission to give you access to those two things. Now, they're very important, but you still need someone to give you access to those two things. And then we talk about the two other aspects of leverage, which is code, so software, AI, using software. And we talk about the idea of some of the most valuable companies in the world right now are software products, meaning that someone writes the code, and then whether it's 1,000 people using that software or 1,000,000 people or 1,000,000,000 people, the person writing the code is not working any harder. That is the perfect definition of leverage. And then we also talked about media, so social media or the news or social media or news network or TV, right? Any of that kind of stuff. And the idea is that you create a piece of content, you create a video, or you create an article, or you create a piece of writing on Instagram everywhere. And whether one person looks at that video or 1,000,000 people looks at that video, you're not working any harder. And that is the classic, idea of leverage. And then we talk about combining both of those things. Typically, I always encourage new entrepreneurs to start out with a non-permission leverage, meaning you don't need anyone's permission to write code. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can write code with AI in a minute here. You don't need anyone's permission to create content online. Most people spend their time online just scrolling social media. You should be creating instead of consuming, right? And the people who are entrepreneurs, they spend their time creating on social media, not just consuming information and consuming content. That makes you very lazy mentally. You have to think of creating through social media. But you combine all of those four aspects, and then you can really, really use leverage where you put in 1 unit of your effort into something and you get 100 units of your output. And usually you want to start out with code and media. And then as you grow more and more resources, then you start to hire people, and then eventually you start getting capital. That was the step I took. And then we then went from leverage and started talking about how do you actually understand what business you want to offer. And we'll talk about the idea of being obsessed with problems. So looking at problems around you, what are difficulties people are facing? And that requires empathy, meaning that you have to not be selfish. You can't be thinking about yourself all the time. You have to think about other people. What are they facing in their lives right now? What's making their life hard? What's making them unhappy? What's the gap between them and their happiness? And when you start thinking not just about yourself, but other people, you will start seeing problems everywhere. And that's the beautiful thing. There's so many problems everywhere if you think outside of yourself. So that requires empathy. It requires you not to be selfish and thinking about yourself all the time. You need to be, when you see someone unhappy, you need to ask them, what's going on? And by having all of those conversations, you start to understand all the different pockets of problems. Just like Pastor Ige has identified a problem here, which is people who are coming to Canada, they need some skill sets, and then there's a gap in skills for them to become a productive member of the new society. And he's trying to fix that gap by creating seminars like this. So that is an example of looking at problems and finding solutions to them. And then from there, we then talked about when you've identified the problems that you care about, ideally, the problem that you are also being impacted by. So those are the best types of problems to solve, the ones that you are also facing yourself because you're the perfect customer because you're trying to solve it for yourself. But once you've identified the problem, the next thing is to try and create a positioning statement so that you can position yourself in the marketplace relative to the people who have the problem. And we talked about a simple formula to do that. I help X person, and you want to define who that X person is. And the more you can define who that person is in detail, they're a mom of 5, they typically driving this kind of car. The more you can define that person, the better, because once that person sees the definition, they will raise up their hands and say, oh yes, that is me. You're talking about me. The more general you are, where you're like, I help moms. Moms is too general because there's all types of mom. You want to define what type of mom are you helping, or what type of student or entrepreneur, like whoever it is you're solving the solutions for, you're solving a problem for, you want to define who that person is. So I help X person get Y outcome. So you want to define the outcome that you're helping them get. And the more you can be very clear about what that solution looks like. You can just say, I help you become happy. Like, what does happy really mean, right? You have to be very detailed, which means you need to do a lot of thinking about what you're trying to bring to the marketplace. So I help X person get Y solution without Z headache. So without Z headache is basically your own unique speed, your magic, what kind of headache you're helping them avoid. So for example, I help moms who just had a baby and are trying to return back to work. I help them get gainful employment without having to send thousands of resumes. That is a perfect positioning statement. You define who you're helping, you define the outcome, and you define the headache you're helping them avoid by working with you. And then we also talk about the concept of making sure that whatever problem you want to solve, there has to be some competency there. right? So for example, I am not a medical person. I'm not going to go offer solutions to help with medical problems because people will think I'm incompetent and they won't believe in me, which obviously makes sense. So you want to make sure that whatever it is you're solving, it has an element of a natural interest as well as a level of competency, and then you can merge them together, and that's a sweet spot. And then we then talked about creating an offer. So when you've basically identified the problem you want to solve, you've positioned yourself in the market, you want to create an offer. And we talked about 4 aspects of creating an offer. We talked about addressing the dream outcome. We talked about giving them some level of confidence of the likelihood of you being able to deliver that solution. Whether it's you saying, if you don't get the result I promise, you're going to get your money back. Or whether that's saying, hey, I've already helped 50 people get a solution before, or I have expertise from university, from certifications to be able to deliver the solution. You need to be able to show some level of confidence that the likelihood of them getting that outcome. And then we also talked about collapsing the time between when they pay you or when they start with you and when they get a solution. The shorter that time is, the more valuable your offer is. If you're offering to help someone get a job where you say it's going to take 2 years, that's not really valuable to them. But if you say it's going to take 2 weeks, they're very interested, right? And of course, you don't want to lie. So you want to have a strategy to help get them that solution in 2 weeks. And then the last aspect of creating an offer we talked about is being able to reduce the amount of effort and sacrifice needed for them to get that job, to get that outcome. And the lower the effort and sacrifice is needed, the more likely, the more compelling your offer is. And from the offer, we then talked about how do you get your first customer? How do you get the first person saying, you know what, I'm actually interested in this. I want to pay you for this. We talked about a very simple strategy. You don't have to start with ads. You don't have to spend any money on doing any stuff. You have to use the level of leverage with content that I talked about earlier on. Everybody has a social media profile. You've got Facebook, you've got Instagram. Instead of you scrolling on and on, you can create offers. And we talked about the way to create an offer and to get your first customer is to use the giveaway offer strategy. And with the giveaway offer, what you do is now that you've crafted your offer, you basically build out the perfect offer and say, hey, for this offer, you're going to get these 5 things. You're going to paint out all the things they're going to get from working with you. And then you say, I'm going to give it away to one person at random for free. And then everybody will try to get it for free and they'll put the information. But we also said that if nobody expressed interest after you do this giveaway offer, then it means the offer is probably not compelling. You need to go back to the drawing board and improve the offer, improve the problem, improve the positioning, and then again, try again. And then you do this cycle over and over again because it doesn't cost you anything to actually do it. Of course, it costs you your time, but beside that, you're not spending any money to do this. But when you do the giveaway offer, as soon as you find something that you find a lot of people saying, I want that for free, then it means that you've hit gold. And then you then do the giveaway to that one person who will win, but the remaining individuals who do not win, they're basically your customers. You go back to them and say, hey, you didn't win this giveaway of this flashy thing that I'm going to give, but I'm going to offer to you at X% discount. And then you negotiate with them or you just make them an offer. And then that's how you get your first wave of customers. So from idea to business, all good to go. Now, the next thing we're going to move forward with is talk about how do you get access to resources to actually then take this business idea to the next level. Before I do that, any questions so far? Good? Everyone's good? Perfect. So how do you get access to resources? So there are 2 types of resources people need to get their business up and running. This is based on the premise that you've built some traction, you've seen customers saying, yes, I'm interested in that. Ideally, people have already started paying you for this thing already. It means that, yes, you now have something that you want to build on. And there are 2 types of funding. One is called dilutive funding, and the other one is called non-dilutive funding. Dilutive funding means that someone wants a stake of your business. They want equity. So, for example, when we recently raised $1 million for our company, was an equity, meaning that the investors came in and now they own a part of my company, which has pros and cons. The pros is that it's money I don't have to pay back. But the cons is now they own some part of my company, meaning that they have investors now, and just do anything. I have to talk to my investors depending on how big the thing is. So there are pros and cons. I have to decide what makes the most sense for you. And when it comes to equity, dilutive funding, which is what the investment is, there's a whole world out there. So there's different types of investors, and depending on where you are in your business, you will go to different types of investors. Now, I don't believe anyone here today is probably ready for that kind of investment. So I'll talk about non-dilutive funding. So non-dilutive funding is funding that doesn't require people to own any part of your business. And non-dilutive funding could be loans, it could be grants, it could be government sponsorship, and all sorts of programs. Now, there's a whole bunch of programs out there. If you go to ChatGPT and just type non-dilutive funding options in Canada or in Manitoba or wherever you are, AI will give you a whole bunch of resources. So I don't need to tell you any of those resources today. But one of the ones that I will share with you is a program called Futurepreneur. I'm going to put it in the chat here. So if you're in Canada, Futurepreneur is an amazing program that supports specifically people between 18 to 39 years of age. So if you're within that age bracket, that would be great. If not, they do have other programs outside of those age groups. But Futurepreneur would offer up to $75,000 in loans. And you can then use the loan to kickstart your business. And all they require from you is a business plan as well as a cash flow projections of your business, which is why, again, you have to be able to have done all of that work initially of positioning yourself properly and getting your first few customers, because you can then use it and say, oh, this is where I am right now. And if I'm able to continue on this track and you give me some money and I do more marketing and I do X, Y, Z, I hire more people, I can be able to grow the business by this much. That is what they would want to see. Any kind of investor, frankly, they want to see that type of understanding that you have clarity on where you're going. You don't just go and ask them for money. You have to give them a story, and the story has to be backed by proof and traction. And ideally, the best traction is customers raising up their hands saying, I want this thing. So that's just one example of non-dilutive funding. And depending on your business, there are lots of different government programs that are available to provide support. Again, if you just go to ChatGPT or any of the AI tools or even Google and just say government programs, non-dilutive funding, Canada or wherever you are, you will see a whole bunch of options and you can then work your way through that. But it doesn't matter what the government program is, because all of them, you still have to be able to tell a story of why you should get that money, why they should invest in your business, or why they should give you the grants, and you still have to tell that compelling story. And that story is much, much, much easier as soon as you can show the proof. Any questions so far about funding? Do I have any specific questions about that? You can put it in the chat, or you can say it out loud if you have any specific questions before I move on from funding. The last aspect I'm going to talk about is more on AI. But before I talk about that, any questions so far on funding or any of the things I've talked about earlier? Okay, so we will move on then. So we're going to make our way back to the concept of leverage. Again, my favorite topic, leverage. So we talked about, code, technology as a lever of leverage. Now, the reason why I love code, the reason why I studied software engineering when I was at university was literally because I read about Bill Gates when I was much younger, and I was like, how did Bill Gates become the richest person in the world? Well, he became the richest person in the world because he was able to serve more people with his software. And there's a whole law of wealth, which is your financial reward is proportional to the amount of people you can serve. So the more people you can serve and add value to their lives and solve their problem, that will impact how much money you make. So for me, when I always think about business, I'm always thinking, how can I serve the most amount of people? Best way you can serve the most amount of people is through software, because software allows you to, one of the purest levers of leverage. But the problem becomes, how do I build software? I don't have any technical expertise. I never went to university for software, or I don't have any technical understanding. Well, I have some good news for you. The good news is that AI has become a powerful way for us to be able to build software without having to coding expertise. So actually, earlier this week on Thursday, I spoke to a group of 50 entrepreneurs, just like this room, about how to build their first software without writing any piece of code. And we talked about using Claude Code. I don't know if anyone has heard of any of those tools, Claude Code. And we talked about how to combine AI tools to allow you to build software. And maybe we'll have to do a whole separate class on that entirely, because that is a whole class to talk about. But the short of it is that with AI now, there are many stages of AI use. Most of us right now, the way we use AI is just to ask a question. By the way, who is using AI, by the way? Can you put in the chat if you're using AI, or if you've used AI recently or use of AI? Can you put in the chat what tool you use and how you use AI? Can you put in the chat so I can make sure I'm actually, I'm not speaking too far ahead. If people using AI, I'm seeing some thumbs up, wonderful. And if you're using AI, can you share with me in the chat what type of AI tools are you using? Just so I can know. Or you can just say that out loud. Okay, ChatGPT for information finding from Lanre. That's very good. Gemini, that's a very good one. Who else is using AI? Is everyone using AI here? So I'm seeing a few people using AI here. So we've got Grace from Patience. That's awesome. Gemini and ChatGPT for teaching, that's really good. Perplexity, that's a very good one. Okay, so that's very, very good. Copilot, Gemini, and ChatGPT. Love it. So I'm very glad that you're using AI. Please, 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 if you've not used AI, you're just missing out on so much. AI is extremely powerful. But there are 4 stages of AI use. The first stage is where most of us are right now, which is we use the tool to get some sort of information back to us. So we put in some questions and then AI gives you some answers. Good. Nothing wrong with that. But most people stop there, and that's quite unfortunate because there's way more advanced uses of AI. The second stage of AI is using what we call agents. So agent goes beyond just giving you information. Agents will actually do things for you in the real world. So for example, my company, Outreach Genius, we build voice agents. And the voice agents will basically call somebody and have a conversation with them like a real human being would. And we use it for like, plumbing companies, electricians companies, roofing companies, painting companies. They're always busy all the time. And when people call their business, it just goes to voicemail. Now they use our software to pick up the phone, talk to them, qualify what they're looking for. And the AI agent is connected to their calendars, to their systems, and they can book appointments, they can take messages like how a real human being would. So that is an agent. But the problem of an agent is that an agent oftentimes can only do one thing only. And the world is a very complex place. The world is chaotic. And that is where the third level of AI comes into use, which is what we call workflows. So a workflow is where you combine multiple agents with multiple instructions to navigate the chaos of the real world. So for example, with our AI voice agent example, sometimes when the AI will call people, it goes to voicemail. But what a workflow will does is it tells the system and say, okay, if the call goes to voicemail, wait for 2 more hours and then try again. And then if you try again after 2 more hours of waiting, well, send a text message and send an email. And then you can have all these like branches of different complications of things that AI can do to navigate the chaos of the real world. And that is like the third level of AI use, where you combine multiple agents to do different jobs, almost like you're building your own team, right? And all of them are AI agents, and that's the third level. And most people never reach the fourth level. And the fourth level I unlocked a couple months ago, and it's been wonderful for myself and my company. But it's basically AI code. So the way to build real new solutions is to have AI write code for you. And most people have not discovered how powerful this is. This is the most powerful thing in the universe right now, because literally you're able to go between any idea you have in your head and a software solution in a matter of hours. You don't need to hire some engineer somewhere and pay them tens of thousands of dollars. You don't need to spend a lot of effort trying to learn how to do it yourself. All you just have to do is tell AI. AI is smart. It knows everything basically. You tell AI, this is what I want, and then AI will get it done for you. As a matter of fact, I am working on building a community to help. I'll put it in the chat before we wrap up today, but I've been building a community to help train people for free to learn how to turn their words into code. And that means that, as we talked about the initial ideas at the beginning of this chat, we talked about the initial ideas of how do you turn your expertise into how to find problems, how to solve them. Sometimes what is holding people back is that they just don't have the way to build a software to offer that solution. Well, now that is no longer a blocker anymore. So with technology these days now, you're able to turn any of your ideas into software without having to write any code or having any technical expertise. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put in the chat my community that I've been creating. It's a free community on School. You're welcome to apply to join it. It's for free. I just put it in the chat there, and you can join it. And in that community, I'm teaching entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs how to do all the things we've talked about today, but more importantly, how to turn their voice into software without having to write any code. And I feel like once you can do that, nothing is limiting you anymore. All that is limiting you is your ability to take action and just move forward. So if you're interested in doing that, just join that community. I just put in the chat, there's a School community, and it's for free, and there's a whole bunch of other founders there as well. And I encourage you, if you want to, next step in your entrepreneurship journey, definitely want to do that. But I think I'm gonna take a pause here now. I think, Pastor, I'm over my time right now, but hopefully that was not too overwhelming. That was a lot of information I threw. But remember, at the beginning of this, we talked about foundations. These are the foundations for you to then use to build any sort of entrepreneurship pursuit you want to do. If you have an understanding of how to create offers, how to spot problems, how to think about leverage, how to get your first customer using the giveaway offer, and then we're then talking about how to then turn your ideas into software, which is like the last bit in the piece, which I can show you how to do in that school community. You can join it as for free. Then nothing is really your way anymore. And I'm very passionate about our community, the Black community, especially understanding all the skills, because that's how we build wealth in our communities to really uplift everybody. And that's something I'm very passionate about. Thank you very much, everybody. And if you have any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Otherwise, I will hand it over to Pastor. But hopefully you've gotten some value from my few minutes of talking.
This was a power-packed conversation with you. And I said, I know it's not a crusade, but I feel like power-packed is the best way to describe it. I'm sure that all the people on this call are grateful that they attended today's conversation, and meeting. I don't know if anyone has questions, because that's the next thing on the agenda. And I was going to say to Pastor that this isn't supposed to be the only session you'll take. I feel like this should actually be something that we get exposed to from time to time, because I'm sure after today, people who are planning to become entrepreneurs or who are in the process of discovering what their businesses would be and all of that might want to get in touch with you. So hopefully we get to see you again. I see also that you dropped something in the chat, yes, which is sort of a mentorship program that you anchor or handle.
Yes. So in that program, I help show people how to use AI to build their own software. So if you have any ideas of problems you want to solve in the world, but you don't have software experience, well, that's no longer a limiting factor. You can use AI to build anything, and I show people how to do that in that group.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions. I don't see hands up. I don't see questions in the chat. Oh, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, David. That was a very powerful presentation, and it was well taken. My question is about the funding. I just want you to clarify. Does it mean that funding can only be by loan, nothing like grants from the government?
Good question. There's definitely grants from the government. Absolutely. The grants typically have different types of qualification criteria, and I've gotten some from the government. Some grants are typically based on the government wanting small businesses to have cybersecurity, and they give you money so you can go invest in cybersecurity. But typically, most of these grants typically have qualification criteria. And usually this qualification criteria typically is based around revenue. So the government will say, if you want to get these grants, you need to be doing at least $100,000 a year in revenue or something like that. So the government doesn't just give money randomly, which is why I would not worry too much about government funding, because if you don't have the foundations, meaning a business that is generating revenue and has customers, you're not going to get any funding, and that won't work. But yes, there's a lot of funding out there, different types of funding, different types of amounts, but all of them is typically based around revenue generating businesses. There are some very little times that the government will give money to people who are not generating revenue, but typically the business will have to show social good, doing good for your community, or you're basically doing some sort of thing that will be good for your environment, or your so environment, the community, subsection of the community. So there's sometimes the government will fund that, but 90% of the time, revenue is typically a part, unless you're non-for-profit, then that's a different entirely case. But does that help with your question there?
It did. So nothing like a startup kind of a grant.
Not that I know of. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's very rare. Because there's usually a qualification criteria, which is revenue. Because if they just say startup idea, then everybody will come in with their startup idea. The government needs filter, and the way to filter is revenue, because you've worked very hard, you've validated it, and then the revenue is the proof of that. So when I talk to new entrepreneurs, I say don't worry too much about funding from the government for now. Worry much about getting a customer, because then you can prove to the government that there is something here, or even anyone really, investors, other kind of investors, and loans too, right? That was very easy at that point.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Great question.
Yeah, so I was saying thank you so much for this session. It's been really enlightening. I wouldn't say overwhelming. I'm still trying to wrap my head around so much I've heard in a minute. So I was going to ask, but you answered part of my question from Sister Mary's question. I already answered part of that, which was going to be at which point in this business proposal and all of that does one get to ask for a loan or grant or finance from government sources? At which point you made mention of 4 steps in the business strategy. At which level does one now go request for finance support for the business?
Absolutely.
My question. And then my second question, let me maybe I should just ask everything in a wrap. So what if one has ideas for business and they are not new? There are things other people are already doing. So does that mean one is not following the right strategy to a business that would really, let's use the word prosper? Because someone might be led to do something someone else is already doing, and maybe that's their strength, that's what they feel they can do, that's what they want to do. Like, does it have to really be like something new?
Good question. No.
Yeah.
In fact, you want to start a business that someone else is already doing. You don't want to be the first person to start something very new. That is not smart. Not at all. You always want to have your unique angle, your own unique take based on your own personal experiences, but you want to solve problems that already exist that someone else has proven that there is a market for and they're serving. And then you want to go to that market and say, I know you're getting this, but I'm going to give you better experience, better technology, better. Now you're finding new ways to provide value to them. So yes, I believe in solving old problems with new technologies, with new approaches, right? So especially when you're starting out, only advanced entrepreneurs like the Elon Musks of the world are the ones who will try and tackle very, very new problems that no one else has tried to solve. In fact, if there's an industry or a sort of a thing that no one else has solved, I will actually encourage you to not go in there because there's probably a reason why no one is doing that. It's probably a few people have tried it and have failed, and you don't want to be a lesson. Yes. So, but to your earlier question, in terms of the timeline for where you want to start looking for funding, after you've done validation, right? After you've proven that someone is willing to give you money for that thing, because that's the ultimate proof. The money is where if people can put their money where their mouth is, it means that they're not just telling you things to make you feel good. Because sometimes people will say, "Oh yeah, I'll pay for it," but until that money hits the bank accounts, it's still a lot of words. So as soon as they say yes, I pay you, I send the money, and you can do that a few times, right? And you can show there's a pattern here, not just not just like my cousin bought this thing because they want to support me. That's good, it's still good, but you want strangers, people who don't know you yet. But because the problem you're talking about, they really feel it in themselves and like, if you can solve this for me, I'll give you whatever money you want. Then once you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of those, then you can go to a bank or someone and say, hey, listen, I've got the proof here, and you create a business plan, which you can use AI to do. And then, of course, you can start then getting funding from different sources based on that. But the proof is very important. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And I see in the chat, someone was asking about a link to the Futurepreneur. So I'm just going to put it in here.
Okay, there are no more hands up. I'm guessing that means nobody else has any questions. Is that correct? Can we get thumbs up or something just to confirm that? Still just checking. Seems like there are no more questions. But if there are other questions, or maybe if questions come up after, I guess we could also maybe post them on the group and Pastor can find a way to reach out to you to get answers. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Always happy to. And I think that I will be involved in a different event again. So always happy to come out. I would again, I have that link I posted. I'm going to post it again, the school community. I do encourage anyone who is very interested in entrepreneurship, technology, AI, building their business. You definitely want to join that community because I expand more of the ideas I shared today. I expand them in this community. So I'm just gonna put them again in the chat. So if you want to join, you can definitely join there. Okay, I just put it in the chat there again. So you're welcome to join that community. But otherwise, it was a pleasure to spend some hour or so with you, and I enjoyed the privilege of sharing my knowledge, and always happy to.
Thank you for sharing so much with us today. I hope that in the next few months or years, some of us become this great entrepreneur that you become proud of too. And we can also say, oh, David was part of our success story. Thank you so much. So until next time, thanks for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. God bless you.